A British businessman walks into a Moscow hotel with a camera the size of a cigarette pack and walks out with the blueprints to end the world. October 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis is 72 hours from ignition. President Kennedy sits in the Oval Office, photographs spread across his desk, images of Soviet missile installations in Cuba, clear as day. What almost nobody in that room knew was this: those photographs and dozens more like them came from a single source, a GRU colonel named Oleg Penkovsky, and he was already dead. Let's rewind. Penkovsky wasn't born a traitor. He was a career Soviet military intelligence officer, GRU, not KGB, with access to the most classified weapons development programs in the USSR. Clean record, loyal facade. But by 1960, something had shifted inside him. He'd seen the reality behind Soviet propaganda. He'd watched the regime lie about its own strength. And he'd decided that the only way to prevent nuclear war was to tell the West the truth. The British intelligence service got the first hint in 1960. A contact reported that a Soviet officer wanted to defect, but Penkovsky didn't want to flee. He wanted to stay in place. He wanted to photograph documents, collect intelligence from inside the machine, and pass it to the West while maintaining his cover. It was audacious, it was dangerous, and it was exactly what MI6 and the CIA needed. Here's the thing about Penkovsky, and this is where it gets specific: he wasn't a James Bond. He was meticulous, neurotic even. He kept detailed notes. He photographed documents with precision. And he used a camera no bigger than your hand, a Minox, a miniature camera that could fit into a cigarette pack or a hollow coin. The Minox became his weapon. Between 1960 and 1962, Penkovsky photographed more than 10,000 pages of Soviet military documents. 10,000 pages, blueprints of the R-7 intercontinental ballistic missile, specifications for nuclear warheads, strategic deployment plans, technical manuals that revealed exactly how advanced or how limited Soviet weapons actually were. And he did it all while going to work, attending meetings, living what looked like a normal life. The dead drops were poetry in their mundanity: a package left under a bridge, a dead letter box hidden in a park. Penkovsky would place the microfilm in a location, and within hours, a CIA or MI6 officer would retrieve it. The Soviets, meanwhile, had no idea. He passed every security check. He filed every required report. He was invisible. But in early 1962, the CIA and MI6 made a decision that would seal Penkovsky's fate. They wanted him to meet with Western officials directly. They wanted him to brief them in person. Penkovsky was terrified. He knew that face-to-face meeting increased the risk exponentially, but he agreed. In April 1962, he traveled to Paris and met with American and British intelligence officers. He gave them everything he had. And then he returned to Moscow. The intelligence he provided was staggering. Soviet missiles were less accurate than Western estimates. Their nuclear arsenal was smaller. Their deployment timeline was slower. The strategic balance that Kennedy feared, Soviet dominance, didn't actually exist. The Soviets were bluffing, and Penkovsky had the proof. Then came October. The Cuban Missile Crisis erupted. Kennedy, armed with Penkovsky's intelligence, knew more about Soviet capabilities than Khrushchev's own subordinates did. Kennedy knew they couldn't sustain a confrontation. Kennedy knew the missiles in Cuba were a bluff. That knowledge, that certainty, changed everything. It changed how Kennedy responded. It likely prevented nuclear war. But the KGB was closing in. By the fall of 1962, they detected a lake. They didn't know it was Penkovsky yet, but they were narrowing the circle. The CIA and MI6 knew time was running out. They urged Penkovsky to defect, to get out while he could. He refused. He said he had more to give. He said he wanted to stay. In October 1962, just as the missile crisis was unfolding, the KGB arrested Penkovsky at his apartment in Moscow. They'd been watching him. They knew. The arrest was quiet, clinical, no fanfare, just a knock on the door, and he disappeared into the Soviet system. The CIA and MI6 learned about it through back channels. Their asset was gone. The trial was a show trial, Soviet style. Penkovsky was convicted of espionage. The sentence was death. On May 16, 1963, he was executed. The Soviets claimed he was shot. Later, some accounts suggested he was burned alive. The truth, like so much about this case, remains classified. What we know is that Oleg Penkovsky was dead. But here's the irony, the small, bitter irony that makes this story linger. Penkovsky died believing his mission was over. He didn't know that his microfilms had already changed history. He didn't know that Kennedy had used his intelligence to prevent a nuclear war. He didn't know that his sacrifice had saved millions of lives. He just knew he was caught and he was going to die. In 2010, decades after his death, The CIA and MI6 partially declassified Penkovsky's intelligence files. Historians and scholars pored over them. They confirmed what had been suspected. Penkovsky's information was among the most valuable intelligence ever obtained during the Cold War. One intelligence analyst called it the crown jewel of espionage. The suitcase he carried, the camera he used, the microfilm he exposed, these artifacts tell a story that textbooks often gloss over. They tell you that one person, acting alone with nothing but courage and a cigarette-packed camera, altered the trajectory of human history. No armies, no governments, just a man with a conscience and access to secrets. The Cuban Missile Crisis is taught as a story of political brinkmanship, of Kennedy and Khrushchev staring each other down. But it's also a story of a Soviet colonel who decided that the truth mattered more than his life. That choice echoes across 50 years. That choice still matters. When you walk through a museum and you see a display about espionage or the Cold War, sometimes there's a small placard, a photograph, a name, Oleg Penkovsky. Most people walk past it. They don't know what he did. They don't know that his microfilms changed the world, but now you do. Subscribe so you don't miss the next Cold War secret that rewrote history.